How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. Today we're talking about how long it takes you to retire based on whatever you're investing and however much you're spending. So we're going to take a look at how long it would take, and we're going to use a couple different rules of thumb that are really going to help simplify this for you. Now, do you ever get stuck at your job or when you're in school and you think, man, it would be nice not to have to actually work for my income? If there's some way that I could create income passively so that maybe I could put in the work up front and then never have to continue this daily grind where you are dependent on your job. You can't do what you want to do. Maybe you can't even do your job like you want to do. Maybe they want you to do things that you're not comfortable with or you just don't like. But you can't really go out on a limb. You can't change it because you don't want the repercussions that could come with changing how you work. Well, it would be really nice if you were financially independent if you feel that way. So, what does that mean? What is financial independence? It is essentially being able to have your investments provide enough income to you or enough return that you don't have to rely on some form of active income such as a day job to be able to live your life, to be able to pay for your expenses. Now, for a lot of people, this is not something that we do until retirement. And a lot of the time then, a lot of people think that they'll never be able to retire. A lot of people don't think Social Security will be there. So, what is a way that you can do this besides just relying on the government or just trying to get by day for, your working 40 years down the road and continuously working until either you die or you go on Social Security and maybe you have a nest egg? Well, you can try to retire early using a couple different rules that we're going to talk about. So this is something that I aspire to. This is something that I want to work towards. And actually, it's how I branded my merch. So I do have merch down below, but I want to talk about financial independence. That is the thing that fires me up the most about the stock market, about index funds, about real estate. It all goes back to hitting financial independence, not having to rely on anything but yourself for your income. So if you know what your expenses are, whatever you spend each year or each month, you can figure it out. If you're looking at your monthly, let's say you spend about $3,300 a month, that is about $40,000 throughout the year. If you spend $40,000 a year, based on a rule that was found in a different study, it's called the Trinity study, we can calculate that you will need about $1 million in investments. And you can take a look at this here. It's called the 4% rule. Basically, you can take out of your investments whatever 4% of the investments are. And again, this depends on how you're invested and how long a period you're looking at and what kind of risk you're willing to take. But generally, you should be okay if you take out 4% of your investments each year. So again, you have $1 million in index funds. You should be able to take out about $40,000 a year or $3,300 a month and not run out of the money. This is a very nice rule. This sets into our minds how much we need to be able to save, invest, and what kind of return we need to get, how long we're looking, depending on how much we spend. So this in practicality, let's take a look at it. Let's say you are investing $100 a week, and we do that in our weekly dividend investing portfolio. If you ever want to check that out, it's on this channel. We do them every week. We invest in new dividend paying stocks. But let's say you invest $100 a week. You're getting an 8.5% rate of return. The rate of return is anywhere from 8 to 10%. So that's a pretty good amount right there. That's not super high. That's not super low. And let's say you go for 35 years. I'm 25. Let's say I invest until I'm 60. This $100 a week. Well, at the end of that 35 years, I should have just almost exactly $1 million. So at that point, I could retire. If I don't get any Social Security, as long as I spend about $40,000 a year, I should be okay. Now, some of you might need a lot more than that. Some of you might spend $100,000 a year. So you're going to have to bump this up accordingly. If you spend $100,000 a year, multiply whatever your expenses are times 25, and that is the portfolio size that you need. So let's say you don't want to work 35 years. I know that personally, I don't want to work in my day job. Well, there are a couple different options for you and a couple different ways that you can change this. First of all, you could just You could just find a different line of work that you actually enjoy, and that's not really retiring early, but if it's something you enjoy, it's probably just as good as it. So I really like YouTube. I like being able to grow this. I make more from YouTube over the last couple months than I did from my day job. So I don't consider this work. If I did this full time, that would be awesome. Of course, I don't want to bank on the fact that I'll be doing this for 40 years, but let's say you just move into a different line of work and you like it. That's one way. The other way that you could retire early is from real estate. Let's say you have a rental property that you bought for $100,000. You only had to put $20,000 down, and they pay you about $100 a month in cash flow after all expenses, after everything you have to pay for maintenance and all that. You get about $100 a month. Well, you need about 33 of those to be able to retire and get about $40,000 a year in income. So those are two options for you. Otherwise, you could invest a lot more in your investments. So this is what I want to do. If you bump up your periodic contribution, you can be able to hit financial independence a lot earlier. So for example, I plan on making hopefully north of $100,000 this year. And this is not easy money. This is me hustling my butt through different things and trying as hard as possible to grow YouTube and to continue in my day job. Let's say I hit $100,000, but I only need to spend $50,000. Now, I'm not saying this is attainable for everyone, but if you're watching this video, you probably have a pretty decent chance at making $100,000 somewhere down the line. You're already working on yourself outside of your day job. You're not just sitting at home watching Netflix 24/7 outside of your job. So I think that that's probably a good sign. So let's say you invest $50,000 a year and you take, let's say you want to do this for 20 years. Well, at the end of this period, you'd have about $2.4 million. That's huge. That's way more in a way shorter time span than we just had before. Let's say you just want to hit that $1 million mark. Well, it would take you less than 15 years, and I think it's closer to about 12 years. So it would take you about 12 years investing $50,000 a year to hit that $1 million mark. If you're willing to do that, of course, then your expenses are a little bit higher, right? If we're receiving $100,000 and we're spending $50,000, we're investing the other $50,000. Again, this is after taxes. There's some different ways to get around that depending on what kind of taxable accounts and non-taxable accounts you have and tax-deferred accounts. But if you are doing $50,000 a year, you're spending $50,000, you actually need $1.25 million. So this is the important part. It's not just how much you can save and invest, but it's also how much you spend. So if you're doing that, if you're spending that amount each year, it would take you about 14 years to be able to hit that 25x rule or the 4% rule. So that is how quickly you can actually retire on that amount. Now let's say you cut some expenses. This is where it gets really interesting. You're still making $100,000, but you're only spending 40 and you're investing 60. So not only are you investing more, but you also need less to retire. That is where it gets very interesting. Let's take a look at if you invest $60,000, well, you only need $1 million. So after about 11 years, you would be able to retire. That is very quick. Now that's still being able to spend a significant amount. Each year, that's still $40,000. Around where I live, that's a decent chunk of change. I mean, generally people spend a little bit more than that, but if you're single or you have a small family, you can probably make it work. And this is assuming you never make income again. Let's say you were going to continue to work, but you only wanted to make $10,000 a year. So instead of $100,000, you only needed $10,000. You're just picking up odd jobs or, whatever you like to do. Maybe you have a side business that you spend a couple hours a week doing. Well, if you only need $30,000 a year instead of the $40,000, then you only need 25 times that 30,000, which is 750,000. So you can retire a lot earlier if you're going to do that kind of coasting fire, as they call it. So if you're willing to work part-time afterwards, well, then you only need to work 9 years. This is where it gets super interesting. If you can build up other streams of income that you're willing to continue with, that makes it very interesting and very motivational here. Now, I did not do a comprehensive view on FIRE. I think that this was a good intro video, but this doesn't cover everything. There's a whole line of finance. There's a whole sector of finance that looks at this. They're called Financial Independence Retire Early followers, the FIRE movement. There's a lot of information on this, and you could spend months, if not years, diving into all the different ways to optimize this between taxable accounts and tax deferred accounts. There's so many different ways to look at it. There are so many genius people that have tried to figure out the optimal way of doing this, what to invest in, how to invest it. There is definitely a lot of information out there if you're looking for it. So let me know your thoughts below. I appreciate you guys watching this. If you want to support the channel in some way, you can check out the merch below. It's really awesome, I think. I am ordering a lot of merch, and hopefully it'll be here in the next week or two. But thank you guys for doing that. If you guys want to start investing, there are links down there below. You can get some free stocks with WeBull depending on when you're watching this. You might get more or less. Right now they're giving 2 free stocks worth $1,600 each if you deposit $100. If you want to start investing with M1 Finance, there's a link down there too. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.